Here we are in our cozy little hell fort again, and this video I am going to attempt to show you how to add some interactivity to your Doom map, react to the player using things, and then do a bit more complex building in a bigger room. So I think over here I am going to add a door, and I'm going to do that by adding 3 different sectors, and you'll see why quite soon. We're going to make this door 128 units wide, because most of the door textures in Doom happen to be 128 wide. I'm going to copy and paste, Control-C, Control-V, to get 3 sectors side by side. And then I'm going to draw a room on the other side. Up there will do. I always find it a little bit difficult to gauge distance when I start up Doom Builder. And over time I get used to it. Alright. So for this, first of all, let's make this a step up to make it look like there's a floor there. I'm just going to roll my mouse wheel once up. And then I'm going to get my step texture here. And grab my floor from here. And paste that all in. Okay. So, the reason I made this 3 sectors is if you use just one sector, then let's say that I was putting a door here. Then if I move this up and down, you can see the entire wall up there has to move. With 3 sectors, I can make the door a little bit shorter than its surrounding area to give it a frame, and then I can use the middle sector as my door. And the door is just a sector. It's a sector that happens to have its ceiling right next to its floor, so that when the player interacts with it, the ceiling can raise and form a gap for them to get through. If I just had the single sector as the door, I would have to roll up and down that entire thing. Alright, so I'm going to take this middle sector and I'm going to scroll it down and down and down and down. I missed putting my floor onto that, so I'll do that. And let's pick a door texture. Control and right click. This one will do. And I'm using shift and down to shift the texture around on the wall. Up, down, left, right, shift it by 1 map unit, holding down shift, shift it by 8. So that's that side of the door. I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. No, I'm not, because I had the wrong thing copied. There we go. Alright, so we have something that looks like a door. And now we have to tell the game that we want the player to be able to interact with it. We're going to go into line mode with L. And we're going to right click on this line, which is the one that represents the door. It might be clearer if I do this in 3D view. Alright, so we've got a front side, that's the texture. And now we want to look at the action. The actions are a list that's in previous Doom editors you had to sort through the whole thing yourself, but they're handily sorted into categories in Doom Builder. And you can see that a line can do things when it's activated. It can exit a level, it can cause a floor to move, it can cause you can do things with lines and scripts and so on. What we're interested in just now is the door. And if you are using the Doom format, you have to know how to read the names of these events, because they're all very rigid. None of them are parameterizable at all. So you have to find an event that does exactly what you want. This is one of the things that UDMF fixes if you're using that. The first character means how the line is activated. W means it will be activated if the player walks over it. S means if the player switches it. D is the same as S, but will operate as a door, meaning that it will operate on the sector immediately opposite the line from where the player touched it. And there's another one, G, that nobody likes, this one, which are gun line defs, which are operated by the player shooting them. The second character is either R or 1, and that means that it is a repeatable event or it can only be done once. For doors that open and close, like the classic Doom doors and E1, M1 and so on, you want this to be repeatable because otherwise the player won't be able to open the door again once it's closed. So what I want to do is have a DR, that's door, repeatable, and it says open, wait, close, also monsters. I think I'm going to allow that. I can't remember if there's one that's door, open, wait, close without monsters. There's door, open, wait, close fast. There's door, blue, red, yellow. So I'm going to allow monsters to use this as well. Tag doesn't matter just now, but we will get into this in future in future line defs we'll be using very shortly. We're going to want to do the same thing on the other side. You'll notice little ticks in the middle of the lines, and the tick points towards the front of the line. Each line has two sides, unless it's on an outer wall here, where it's only got one side. In classic Doom, possibly in Doom format and GZ Doom as well, I can't remember, you can only use the front side of a line. The back side is always ignored when a player tries to use it. So we're going to press F to flip that line def and have the front point that way. And then we want to do the same action here. We can actually do that by just selecting the line, hitting Ctrl-C, deselecting it with C, and then Ctrl-Shift-V will let us... Oh, sorry, I've made a mistake. It's Ctrl-Shift-C to copy line def properties. You can see it at the bottom of the screen there. And Ctrl-Shift-V, and then we get a paste properties special, where we can select we want to paste the action, the tags, the flags, and the textures from that door. And now we can see at the bottom left there we've got action 1 on the inside of the door as well. So let's save that. Let's turn monsters off just now. Select one of the options that has no monsters. They still have difficulty levels because in some map formats, in fact in Doom Classic map formats, the difficulty level can affect the placement of items as well. You can put a blue key somewhere else, or you can make a health pack disappear on harder mode. Alright, so here the player can press use and the door opens. We're going to allow it to close. And it opens again and lets us through. Now you can see on the sides here that the texture doesn't look very good. It misaligns as it goes down. It doesn't really look like it should be doing that. And you can see the same thing in the editor. If I go under the door here and select the floor, if I pull this up, you can see the same effect. By default, Doom draws the texture on the line def from the top of the line def down, so it will scroll as the ceiling goes up and down. We can reverse that behavior by selecting the lower unpegged property, and that means that this will be drawn from the bottom up instead, and so the height of the ceiling won't affect it. It also helps if we put some textures on the sides of the door to make it look like it's going along something, and door track is a classic texture that does exactly that. I am also going to change these to some door stop textures, which I like just to border doors. And this shouldn't be the ceiling there, this should be something that looks a bit more woody, and I will use that. Alright, let's close this door again. This time I'm going to use Control and page down. No, I'm not. I'm going to use Control, I'm just going to use page down, and that is going to drop the ceiling to the nearest floor nearby it. There are things that I keep forgetting as well. Alright, so now, again, you can see the utility of the 3 sectors here, because if I had one sector on this side, if this were all one big sector, I would only be able to drag the whole ceiling up, and that elongates the door as I go. So I don't want to do that. I want to move this up just a bit so it's a bit taller in here. Alright, so that is how you get a player to interact with a door. Let's get them to interact with something a bit more unexpectedly. We're going to put some nice tempting loot in this room. Let's make it a medikit. And maybe a big box of shells. Well, let's use the bigger box. Now, while we're at it, let's select the floors of these sectors and use Control down to drop the brightness down, maybe to 96. Now, what we want to happen here is for the player to enter the room, grab the goodies, and for them to then be assaulted by monsters by peeling the wall back. So we're going to have to construct that out of sectors as well. Let's put a border around here. About that much will do. And let me see. I would like a river of lava between us and the monsters. Just a small one. We don't want to get too extravagant just now. Alright, that's kind of uneven, but we'll work this out as we go. Alright, so let's put this down twice. Let's put the brightness up as well, actually. Let's use our step texture again. And put that on the inside and put that on the outside. And we're just going to use lava texture on the floor. Some textures are animated. Doesn't matter whether you use lava 1, 2, 3, 4. There are properties within Doom or within your WOD or PK3 that will cycle these floors from one to the next. And then on the other side, I'm going to move this up a bit. Not by too much, just there I'll do. And this step doesn't look very good there just now, so I'll copy and paste those bricks down instead. You know what? Maybe I'll use this brown texture instead. That looks pretty good. Alright, let's move this wall back. We're going to go into vertices mode, select both of those. That looks pretty good. And lava is typically quite bright and hot, so we're going to make this bright and this a bit brighter as well. And on here, we're going to go into things mode. Let's place some monsters. The dreaded chain gunner from one side. I don't want to do a chain gunner from the other side as well, because I'm not Sandy Peterson in the chasm. But maybe a couple of shotgunners, which I still look for shotgunner in the list. I mean former sergeant. And let's have a couple of imps as well. That's quite a lot of enemies, but we'll see how that works out. Alright, we don't want the player to be able to see them when they come into the room. So, let me see, is this wall going to work for it? Yeah, let's make these lower unpegged by hitting L this time. That's just the shortcut to do it, without going into the sector, the line properties. And we're going to pull this down so that we apparently have a nice safe room. We're going to make that equal to the floor by pressing page down or just maneuvering it manually. And we're going to put textures on there, so that the monsters get revealed at the most surprising moment. So, to do anything, we want the player to activate a line. There's no getting around that in classic Doom. I think you'd be hard-pressed to do it in UDMF either. Lines do not have to be attached to each other, so I can set up a sort of tripwire that's invisible to the player. And just click twice there and then right-click to end it. So this line is what's going to, I'm going to right-click and move this a bit further forward. This line is what's going to activate this trap. So our action this time is going to be a W1. We want the player to walk over it, and we want it to only happen once. And we want to affect the ceiling of a texture this time. And this is pretty much what we want. We want W1 ceiling raised to highest ceiling. I wonder if there's a fast variety. I don't think there is. There's ceiling lower to floor fast. And there's well, repeated ceiling lower to floor. So we're going to use ceiling raised to highest ceiling. Now this time we want to be able to point the map to what we want to raise. In the case of the door before, we left the tag at 0, which means just operate on whichever sector the back of the line is. But this time we want to do something remotely. So we've got to give a tag to the sector. You can use new or unused just to find tags that haven't been used yet. A tag's a number from 1 to, I think, 65535. And we're going to just select 1 here and select OK. Now we want to give the sector, in sectors mode, the same tag as the line. And the sector special doesn't matter. That's the action we're taking on the sector depends on the line and not the sector. Now if we go back into lines mode, we can hover over the line, and Doom Builder usefully paints an arrow for us showing where the line is going to affect. You can turn that on and off with show event lines. If not, it'll still highlight the sector for you. I think the same happens the other way around. Yeah, when you highlight the sector, we can see what the line does. So let's do that in-game without monsters just now. We've got our door. And as we go over here, this door raises. And we are set upon by monsters. Alright, so that's some interactivity. I'm going to add another door over here, and then I'm going to get into building something a bit more involved, one of the main rooms of our level. So once again, just a sector here, I'm going to lower this down again, put a texture on, and I'm just going to copy and paste this entire arrangement here. Sector, 1, 2, 3, Control-C, Control-V. When you paste, the sector will be in this special mode called Edit Selection Mode. And from here, you can pop open the menu on the right, and you can flip things, you can adjust the size, you can adjust the position. If you right-click, you can also rotate them, which is very useful. Or we can put them there. You can also do this if you select sectors yourself and then hit E to go into edit selection mode. That gets you into the modes that treats all your selection as one thing to edit. Alright. I did this the wrong way round, really. No, I didn't. Because I was thinking that I'd put the rocks outside and the step inside, but that's not the case. Okay. So here we've got an already workable door. And we're going to make this room a bit bigger beyond it. This will be really the main part of our level. Going to adjust my grid size again. And let's draw this out. Again, if you find you've drawn things too big, it is quite easy to readjust the size. We'll see what that looks like, how we feel about it. Let's split this up into different sectors. Going to move a vertex here with a right click. Alright, so that's a fairly irregular kind of sectors. Let's see, going to brighten this up a bit again. We're going to select the ceilings of all the sectors that I just made, and we're going to raise them higher. Maybe about that. That might be a bit high, but we'll see what happens. Going to give the top of the door some texture, and we're actually also going to split this into its own sector, so that I can move this wall down and have a wall that's flush with the entrance. Alright, to make the sector a bit more interesting, we'll raise this up. We'll raise this up a bit higher. We'll raise this up just a bit. And we'll raise that up as well. I think this is probably going to end up a lot too big, but we can fix this quite easily. It's easier to make things too big and then make them smaller than make them smaller and then have them need to be bigger. Again, not my proudest texture work, but it'll do. Let's put a lava river going through here as well. Borrow the step, put the lava down. Now, there's something I didn't do last time because the player... can they fall into this lava? It might be just about wide enough. Something I didn't do last time was add damage to the lava, because there's nothing on that floor that's saying that this will damage the player when it's moved on to. We can do that by setting a sector effect. And just like for the lines, they're very, very rigid. There are, in fact, only 24 of them in the entire game. Let's put this as damage, negative 10 or 20% health, and light blinks. 10% health is on I'm Too Young to Die difficulty, 20% health is everything else. And for this one, we'll put damage, negative 10 or 20% health, without the light blinking. Let's actually raise the brightness of this while I remember. And we don't want this room to be all that dark, actually. Let's raise the brightness of the rest of it a bit. 144, that'll do. So I would like the player to eventually be able to get up onto this platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a switch on just this section of the wall. I'm going to do that by splitting it by adding vertices. Because if I did a switch on one stretch of the wall here and move that up, you'd see the switches appear everywhere on the wall. I just want it here. So we're going to take SW1, BRN1. The Doom 2 bizarrely has so many switch textures that are just the same one. There's that one there, that one, that one. So we'll just select one of the random ones, and we're going to move that up. No, we're not. We're going to move it sideways. We're going to find this switch somewhere. There it is. Okay. Again, that doesn't look too good when it's surrounded by those. There's too much of a gap between them, so I'm going to... Actually, I'm going to lower my grid size even further. I'm going to use the doorstop border. Alright. So this switch is going to act like a platform. It's going to lower this entire sector, as a platform can be any size. It's going to lower this entire sector temporarily so that the player can get onto it, and then it's going to rise back to where it was. And the action to do that is called a lift, I think, yeah. So this is, again, we want a switch, repeatable, lift, lower weight, raise. We do want a tag, because only the door actions can work with tag 0 and just affect the sector beyond them. If you're using UDMF and GZ Doom, it's more lenient. It knows what you mean. If you leave tag at 0, it'll make the switches behave like that as well. Vanilla Doom does not do that. It will make your entire level go mad because everything's got tag 0 and it'll turn everything into a lift. So that's fun. And let's tag that as 2 as well. Okay. We might as well test that this is working. So now we can go down here, we can get into our room. It is much too big unless we're having a massive battle in here. We'll switch the switch, that'll go down. Oh, and you might notice that it goes down, and it goes down a bit too far. There's this weird artifact you might be able to see. Because what it's doing is it's going down to the lowest floor that's adjacent to it, and that happens to be the lava. I don't want it to do that. I want it to go to the floor level, so I'm just going to cut off a bit of the lava. I'm going to select this sector first, and then this sector, and I'm going to press Shift and J to join them together. And that way the second sector I selected will inherit the property to the first one, meaning it's at that floor height and it's not lava filled anymore. Let's do this again. You'll find yourself playing an awful lot of Doom when you're building for Doom. And now we've got the intended effect. Okay. So let's calm this room down a bit. I don't want it to be this big. I'm going to select all the vertices here and I'm going to drag them down a bit. That'll do something like that. And let's move this in. Let's move those in as well. Yeah, my sense of scale was not fantastic here. I don't want to do that. I want to just have these ones and these ones. Shift and click to add to a selection, just like many other things in Windows. And I think I want this section to be a bit bigger than it is. There we go. We can go into vertices mode, delete that because we don't need a vertex there. Okay, I think that's looking a bit better. We might adjust it later on. We could even add a pillar in the middle of this. Just by dragging out a sector and deleting it. And let's put a suitably hellish texture on there. I wonder if Big Door 7 would look any good. It sort of does. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that as it is. All right. So let's decorate this a bit. We're going to have some torches again, maybe. Fire sticks. And let's add some enemies. And when you have a room with multiple different levels on it, you can make more interesting encounters. You can have imps that are far away from you, hurling fireballs, while a pinky... Not a pinky, a demon. While a pinky accosts you from both ends. For this I'm pressing Shift and L to look towards the cursor while a thing's selected. And by making sure that the monsters aren't always just in front of the player, that makes combat a lot more interesting. I might put someone more heavy over here, but I'm going to leave it for now. And what I want the player to do is have to go over here first, fight their way over. Maybe a couple of hit scanners. Wouldn't go amiss. And you know what? I'm going to give them a little bit of cover up here. I'm going to drag out another sector and delete that. So we've got a wall that goes all the way up. I'm just going to texture those with the same wall. It's not very interesting, but we can always fix it later. Let's give the player a couple of bits of ammunition as well. We're going to give them maybe a bigger box of shells here. Box of shells. And they'll get some shells from the shotgunner as well. Perhaps we'll give them a little bit of ammunition. I don't usually give out big boxes of ammunition. I prefer to dot a lot of the small ones around rather than a few of the big ones. But it all depends on your style. Some people prefer the opposite. I'm also going to give them a little bit of health. Not that little. Not that much. That one. Okay, what I want the player to have to do is, instead of getting up here immediately, I'd like them to have to earn that platform by going over here first. Just now, the player can push that switch no matter what happens. It might be possible, if I right-click on this, to find an action that requires a key. I don't think there is, but in UDMF, you would be able to assign a key to that action. So instead of doing that, I'm going to lower this by default to floor level. And that means the player, even if they hit this line def, is not going to do anything because the platform is already as high as it is. We are going to send the player off on a quest to press a switch that will raise that platform a bit first. So let's get them into here. I'll put an alcove down here, and we will... Maybe I'll show you the circle tool again. To make a curved sector that I'm going to split in half and delete. And the anchor point of circles like this, where a lot of vertices are off the grid, is the closest vertex to the one you started dragging the sector at. So that's how to get them to align again. All right. That's going to be maybe a bit lower, actually. That's only 64 higher, a bit higher. All right. And again, because this room looks a bit like a box, I like to make some more irregularities in the room. Maybe lower some of the ceilings as well. Sometimes I just draw shapes and see where it takes me. Alright then. So let's Control A to sort this out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add some support textures in before I do that, so that I can separate this from the rest of the textures on the walls. Let's use support 3 again. Control Shift R to set the alignment back. Alright. We're going to make this just a drop. Let's make it not too high, just there. And from here, we're going to give the player another room. Which I'm completely just making up as I go along. Alright. And that room is going to have its ceiling down lower. And we're actually going to lower this as well. Alright. So now the player has to drop down here and can't get back up. What's down here? Alright, let's put a bit of water in to make it look more interesting. Again, this is just a floor texture. We can put a pit here. Step texture. Let's use water. F water 1 is the floor. And we're going to need a couple of enemies as well. Let's put a Hell Knight here. Let's make this more interesting again by putting some pillars in the water. To make them not quite as regular as that. Again, try to avoid symmetry unless you're using it to make a point. Something that's good to remember is that your mind assigns more importance to something if it's symmetrical. I can't remember where I read that. I hope it's true. But I find it a useful thing if you're making a main area or somewhere you want the player to come back to. That can be symmetrical. No idea if that's nonsense or if it has any kind of truth to it at all. Alright. So we drop down here, we've got a Hell Knight to deal with. And if we haven't picked up a chain gun yet, because it's possible for the player to pick up a chain gun from here, but it's unlikely. The chain gunner would have to throw it off. So the player's going to get the opportunity to get a chain gun here. Couple of imps. Two of which will see you as soon as you drop down. Alright, and we'll put some health behind the Hell Knight as well. Behind there, we're going to put a switch, and we're going to do that again by splitting the line. Let's use a skull switch this time, something important looking. And we have to align this, or we can just hit Ctrl-Shift-R. And let's use the texture around the switch that makes it look good in context. I can't remember the name of that texture, I'm going to have to look for it. SP Hot 1, that was it. And that looks basically okay. We can fiddle around with it a bit. Okay. And again, my favorite thing, add a support 3 texture. Alright. So the player's trapped down here as it is, so I want them to be able to get out. And I'm going to do that by raising this as a platform and making them be able to use it. So what this needs to do is, this needs to be tagged as 3. We're going to tag the switch as 3 as well. And we're going to make this floor, and it wants a switch 1, floor raised to next higher floor, but we don't want to change its texture. That'll come later. S1 floor lower to 8 above highest floor. S1 floor later to lower to highest floor. That'll do. It can be challenging to look at the list of completely unordered actions and to decide which one's best for you. Alright, so what that's going to do is that's going to shoot this up to the next highest floor, which happens to be here. That is going to create a texture missing void because we don't have one down here, so let's put that one on now. Let's make it look like it can be switched. I don't know if the engineering platform is going to look very good in hell. I'll tell you, I've seen worse things, so let's leave it as that just now. And we want the player, having done that, to be able to then lower this platform so that they can step onto it. All the lines are facing in the wrong direction just now, so I'm going to go into lines mode with L, select them all, deselect that one, press F to flip them, and all of these now are going to become switch, repeated, lift, lower, weight, raise, fast. And they have to be tagged as 3. Okay, so that's got us there and back again, but it hasn't affected this platform at all. And we can do that by silently adding a line that the player has to cross, and this one will do very nicely. So we're going to use the tag that we selected for this sector, which is tag 2. We're going to make the player have to walk across it, and it's going to affect a floor. We're going to S1 floor raised by 32, perhaps? Again, very difficult sometimes to find what you want. You know what? I'm going to work around this and show you how to do that. So S1 floor raised to next higher floor. Not S1, that won't work. Walk 1 floor raised to next higher floor. And we'll make this floor have a next higher floor. And it can be round there. We don't want to tag this as 2, otherwise it will also be affected by our switches. So we're going to reset that back to 0. And we're going to make this the height that we want the rest of the platform to go to. Okay, so now that switch will interpret as go there. Alright, another thing I wanted to do was cut a staircase into here, so that the player can then get up the rest of the way, having lowered that lift. One, two, approximately 2. Alright. We're going to make this... We're not going to make this lower unpegged. Yeah, we are going to make this lower unpegged. Sorry for the confusion. Just going to make it look like it aligns with that. Yes, it does. Okay. And these can be brick steps. So that, and we're going to have a bricky kind of texture up here. I'll tell you this, you don't realise how restrictive the plain Doom 2 textures are until you've worked with texture packs a couple of times. Let's use this one, that'll do for now. And let's use that for all our raised areas, to give them a bit of contrast with the floor level. Alright. Oh, this'll be a difficult case because when you have 2 floors next to each other, then they don't look particularly good when they butt into each other. So I'm going to make all the heights that this lift goes to the same. Alright. Going to just drop a couple more shells and maybe a box of ammunition for the player just before they go down here. I'm going to put a box of ammunition right at the bottom of the pit. Alright, let's see if my switches work, and probably I'll be able to walk you through debugging some Doom as well. Okay, we already know that that works. The trap's set, now we've got our flashing, and we've got our hurting as well. Okay, if we scrabble around here, try to use it, we can't, it does nothing. Doom doesn't actually check the height of a switch, so if a switch is miles up on the wall somewhere, you're very welcome to push it. Alright. Alright, that's raised our lift. Pull that back down again, and ride it back up. And because we walked over that line down there, we had the side effect of raising this platform. And that's us up onto the furthest reaches of the levels we can get to just now. Alright, so next time around, with this a decently interactive level, I'm going to finish off the flow of the level, make a little outdoors area, and then show you how to add a couple of secrets.